Hello and welcome to this week's edition of IndyStar High School Hoops Weekly. I am your host, Matt Glenesk. I am joined by the incomparable Kyle Neddenriep. Yeah, no, you deserve it. And then Matthew VanTryon, just Matthew VanTryon down there at the end. Just kidding, he's fantastic too. We got a lot to get to. Obviously, the Boys City tournament is going on. The final is tonight, Monday night. And then, of course, there was the girls' sectional draw came out Sunday night, so Matthew's got a lot of thoughts about that. So without further ado, Matthew, take it away.
So before we get to the draw, the big game last week was HSC and Lawrence North. Obviously, that was a rematch of the state finals from last season. And I was really kind of curious to see how that game would play out, given the fact that both teams had played really well coming into this game. And, you know, it was tight for most of the way, and then HSC kind of, pulled away late. And the story of this game was that HSC won this game with only 10 points from Sydney Parrish. And obviously we know that Sydney Parrish, she was named a McDonald's All-American this week. She is one of the leading contenders for Miss Basketball. We know what she can do. So the fact that they were able to win this game with relatively minimal contributions from her and a big night from Jackie Malucci was key for HSC, because it shows that they can win without Parrish dominating.
Well, she just dominated on that play right there.
Well,
that was
she
coast
did.
to coast.
And so, obviously she can do her thing, and she does very consistently, but she doesn't have to for them to win. And Lawrence North, they'll be fine. I mean, they're in a little bit of a funk offensively right now, but they're still a good team. They're still a contender. And, when you look at the draw, obviously we knew that Sectional 8 was going to be tough with Carmel and HSC and Fishers. HSC, I guess you can say they got the short end of the stick, but one of those teams was going to have to go through kind of a gauntlet of a run. HSC faces Carmel in the opener. That's a rematch of what's been the sectional final for the past 3 years. So they get Carmel in the opener, Fishers gets a bye, and of course, there's potential for a rematch between HSC and Fishers. Obviously, Fishers won the regular season meeting on a buzzer beater, and I would expect a rematch to be just as competitive. There were a couple other things that stood out about that draw. Lawrence North and North Central could meet for a third time. Obviously, it's hard to beat any team 3 times in a row. You think back to last season, North Central beat Lawrence North twice during the regular season. North Central beat Lawrence North twice the regular season, and then Ellen beats North Central in the sectional, and then goes on to play in the state title game. So anything can happen, but there's a potential rematch there. And then there's just all sorts of kind of interesting openers and semifinals and potential championship matchups, and you can find kind of a more detailed breakdown of that on IndyStar.com.
Nice. I didn't have to plug it. I have trained you well. But yes, go to IndyStar.com/sports for our insider's thoughts on the sectional draw. Did you also want to touch on the Northwestern North Central girls game that was this week?
Yeah. So Northwestern is ranked number 1 in the state. They, they're still kind of facing some critics in terms of their strength of schedule and asking whether they really are the best team in the state, because they don't necessarily play the toughest teams. And they showed why on Saturday. They should certainly, they're worthy of that ranking. This game was relatively close for 3 quarters, and then Northwestern just kind of pulled away in the 4th. I think they went on an 11-0 run late. Got to the free throw line 29 times, hit 25 of those shots. They're just very fundamental. Obviously, Madison Layden and Kendall Bostic are both fantastic players, but frankly, they kind of had pedestrian games on Saturday, and Northwestern still managed to win. So they're fundamentally sound. They're sound defensively. They're sound at the free throw line. In a lot of ways, they're almost boring to watch in some ways, just because they're so fundamentally sound, but they get it done, and they showed on Saturday that they can do it against top competition too.
Sure, I won't tell them you said they were boring. Kyle, what are your 3 things you took away from this past week?
Well, I'm going to start with Chittard in the city tournament. Had a chance to see him twice this week. Beat Tindley soundly on Thursday night. Came back in the city semifinals against Cathedral in a game that I wrote a feature on for Saturday. It was on Friday online. Taylor Wayer, their first-year coach, was on the last team, which I covered 10 years ago, that made the city semifinals, and they hadn't been back since. And so this was kind of their chance to get back on that bigger stage. You see there a huge Chittard student section was there lying out the door. So I thought Chittard, even though they lost that game by 10 points, really played well, went toe-to-toe with Cathedral in a really good game. And I thought a key thing, they were down by 17 points early in the fourth quarter. Wayer calls a timeout, kind of lays into his team a little bit. They immediately go on an 11-0 run, and they're right back in the game, and the crowd's into it. Ed Reese-Redmond, really good player. Pat Mastrian, who hasn't played basketball in 2 years, a Michigan baseball recruit who also plays football, gives them a big lift, very physical kid. Cathedral does move on, and they'll play for the city championship tonight against Attucks, though, and that's going to be a great game. These are the two top seeds, and as you see there, Cathedral Attucks had a little bit of trouble early on with Covenant Christian, but just too much, too much Sincere McMahon, too much Keyshawn Ware, and there you see Ware in the corner. Just has a silky smooth shot from the three-point line. He made 5 threes in that game. I talked to him after the game. He said, he goes into these games, he's always a little bit too nervous and has to, and that's normal, I think, for a freshman. Sincere McMahon said he always has to sort of calm him down and say, all right, this, you're fine. And there you see he was fine on Saturday night.
Might need to put some weight on that frame.
He needs to put some weight on, but he's a freshman, so there you go. But Attucks has so many weapons offensively that they're really tough to stop if they have everything going. But Cathedral has a lot too, and there you see Pete Moe, who I think is on his way to being a star in the area, only a sophomore, number 30. You see him there again. Chittard really didn't have many answers for him inside. Very physical and skilled player for a 6'8" big man. Cathedral I didn't probably have their best game in a lot of respects and took a lot of punches from Chittard in that game, but able to answer. Tayshawn Comer, you see him right there, didn't have a huge scoring night, but that floater was really big late, and then Grant Togg also hit some big threes in the fourth quarter for him. So I think this is going to be a great game. Attucks is motivated. They lost by 30 last year in the championship to Cathedral, so they definitely want to get back at them. They feel like they're the top seed, and but they've got to kind of prove it. Cathedral's won 3 in a row, so it should be a lot of fun tonight out at Tech. All
right, so that's the present, but you also want to talk a little bit about the future.
Yeah, because a lot of people I talk to out at the games, we talk about who is good now. Who do you think who would beat who? And it seems like 85%, 90% of teams we talk about are going to be better next year. And you go down the list on the Fab 15 every week, and I'm like, gosh, all these teams are going to be. Now Lawrence North will lose, Tony Perkins. Lawrence Central loses, Dre Davis and Nigel Pack. But even those teams have plenty coming back. And then you look at teams like Cathedral that we'll see tonight. Carmel, Brownsburg, Pike is going to be better next. Fishers is led by sophomores. Westfield has 3 sophomores. Yeah, 3 sophomore leaders. So Plainfield, Warren Central's Malik Stanley's.
Okay, so you're saying there's a lot.
I'm saying there's a lot, and I could go on and on and on. But the bottom line is that next year looks like it's going to be great. It's always fun this year. This year we had so many unknowns. I think next year we'll kind of know who all these teams are a little bit more, and it's going to be more competitive, I think, even more so next year.
All right, well, you teased your Fab 15. Why don't you unveil your Fab 15 for us right now?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to start on the top. I left Lawrence North on the top despite their loss to North Central. I think there's somewhat of a Marion County malaise, or just tired legs a little bit. Not to take anything away from North Central for that win, but I think based on their 2 wins over Lawrence Central so far, I'm going to leave them on top. They came back the next night at Homestead and on the road beat a good Homestead team. I watched the end of that game online, and they handled that end-of-game situation really well. So I'm going to leave the Wildcats on top this week. They have Center Grove at home on Friday, just a 1-game week. So I think a chance for them. They had 6 games in 9 days, counting the Marion County tournament. So I'm going to leave them on top. I'm going to go down to number 5. I dropped Brownsburg a couple spots based on their loss to Carmel on Saturday night. They did have a really good win the night before against Westfield. Connor Lucas had 9 3-pointers in that game, and then they come back the next night. They were 0 for 14 and only made 5 field goals from anywhere. So tough to win when you're not shooting, and Carmel certainly had something to do with that. I bumped the Greyhounds all the way up to number 4, but honestly, after the top 2, 3 to 15 is just, you don't know week to week sort of what you're going to get exactly. And then jumping down to a number 10 there, Leland Walker and the Panthers, keep an eye on them. They're only 7-6 right now, but I'm going to go see them Friday night against Warren Central. And this is a team under Brian Hahn. We know him, used to be the Pendleton Heights coach, really a good, solid coach. And I think now they're starting to get a little bit of momentum now at North Central, a place where, it's synonymous with basketball. And I think the Panther pride's starting to kick in a little bit. I've heard from some fans definitely after that Lawrence North win, and I think they're going to be a handful to deal with moving forward. Leland Walker had 34 points the first time they played Lawrence North, and they got beat. But he's the real deal, and I think that team's starting to get some traction, and I jumped them all the way from outside the rankings up to number 10 this week.
The alma mater of my wife. Love you, honey. All right, Matthew, your girls Fab 15. Hit us.
So we changed things up at the top. HSC moves up to number 1 with their win over Lawrence North. I think that they are, at least right now, the most complete team in the area. I think that they have the most depth, and I think that that's going to serve them well in the tournament. Obviously, it's going to have to with the run that they're going to have to go on to repeat as sectional champions. Mount Vernon just continues to win. They've won 20 games, and they're very sound defensively. They're not overpowering offensively, but they just get it done on the defensive end every night, and they continue winning at a really high rate, which is continues to be impressive. And then Roncalli down at number 11, they won 6 in a row, and they're a team that is certainly one to watch in their sectional. They'll get a tough test against Ben Davis. That looks like the likely semifinal matchup in that sectional. But Elena Vincent and Maddie Bishop are combining for 38 points a game. They have some weaknesses defensively occasionally. They have some lapses, but when you have two players that are combining for nearly 40 points a game, that makes up for some errors. So.
All right, I see some of the smaller schools, Triton Central, University, both having fantastic seasons, both 20-0. University up to 2A this year, and Triton Central trying to get the bad taste out of their mouth of last year's state tournament run.
Yeah, and those two teams could meet in the regional, in the Class 2A regional, and those two teams they're just heavyweights that dominate their opponents seemingly night in and night out. Triton Central beat Cathedral this past week, put up 89 points. To do that against a 4A team of the caliber of Cathedral, who's having a solid season, and they have a lot of solid players, just kind of shows you the next level that Triton Central's at.
All right, well, that is Matthew's Fab 15. And before we let you go, because there was no show last week because of a holiday, we decided to go back to last week and show you the dunk of that week, because this one is just too good not to show. So this is Omar Cooper. Yeah, that is in last week's Marion County tournament, and that is a star receiver. Look at that. Give me some slow-mo. Yeah, I do that all the time.
I love the reaction from the bench. We had a picture of that. Who had that? Was that Jenna? Had the picture of all the Omar Cooper's dad was one of he's the assistant coach. His reaction.
I tweeted that photo out
great.
because it was a great photo. It was DJ
great.
Hughes,
Shamar
Vance, and Tony Perkins all like, what?
All kind of different reactions. But Omar Cooper, he's by the way, great football prospect. I sort of compared him to potentially David Bell.
Yeah, high praise for a sophomore.
Yeah,
but, he's earned it.
I think so, and I think and I'm the one who brought it up, not Omar. So if people thought he was the one, he did not. He said he's that'd be great if he could get to that level, and certainly something to aspire to. But really good athlete. He's comparable because he's great on the football field, and he's a defensive team guy in basketball. It adds a lot to that Lawrence North team.
And David Bell liked the tweet about the Omar Cooper story, so he doesn't feel slighted at all. He's probably really proud to see another young buck in Indianapolis doing great things. All right. Well, he is Matthew VanTryon. He's Kyle Neddenriep. I am Matt Glenesk. Thank you for joining us for this week's edition of IndyStar High School Hoops Weekly.